regardless of what some people are saying in the sphere, Pokopia looks phenomenal. It is right now my most anticipated game on Nintendo Switch 2. It's being developed by the guys who made Dragon Quest Builders. It is a Pokemon life sim, and that's something that sounds amazing, should sound amazing to everyone, and yet you still have a handful of grifters just doing everything they can to downplay and ignore it. You know, people like Arlo, RGT85, like, and dozens of other like gaming YouTubers have just been making statements about how POW Farm is going to embarrass Nintendo and how Pokopia is doomed. And this is going to be a repeat of what happened with Pokemon Legends ZA when that game became stupidly popular after these people spent weeks and weeks like deriding it and insisting it looked terrible. Like Pokopia is going to be successful. Okay. And what's interesting about this success compared to other Pokemon successes is that it is directly going against Palworld. Because when you really think about it, the thing that everyone really loved and worshipped about Palworld was like the whole civilization building aspects, you know, the combat mechanics, like all of that. And Pokopia is going to do the same thing, but better. You know, Pal Farm's coming out. Like Pokopia is going to do the same thing, but better. You know, if anything, like Power World isn't even a finished game at this point. You know, it's going to be shocking just how much better Pokopia is than Power World. And it's something that like the general gaming community is like going to do everything they possibly can to downplay and ignore. It's the same old song and dance we see every single time. Every single time we see some like new like thing coming out that's supposed to destroy Pokemon. Like you always see these people like hype it up, worship it, say it's gonna like be this huge cultural phenomenon, and then it never does become that, you know, for a variety of reasons. You know, we saw what happened with Digimon, with Yokai Watch, and with this, you know, like Power World clearly has no real momentum at all outside of like the hardcore Nintendo grifters, and yet the we're supposed to believe that Palworld is somehow going to embarrass a Pokemon spin-off game made by people who are like absolute masters at what they do. You know, a lot of these guys who are like talking about Pokopia don't even know anything about Dragon Quest Builders. You know, they've clearly never played it. They have no experience with it at all. And yet they're going to sit there and try and tell you that Pokopia looks embarrassingly bad. You know, I saw RGT85 try and say like, "Oh, this game it doesn't look anywhere near the quality of Dragon Quest Builders visually speaking," and I just couldn't help but laugh at that. Like he's making it sound like Dragon Quest Builders is some AAA like realistically rendered game when in actuality it doesn't look all that different from Pokopia. It is embarrassing the lengths we've seen people try and downplay Pokemon over the past several years. You know, this has been an issue since Let's Go came out, where we've been told that Pokemon is this like constantly failing brand, and yet like it keeps doing well. And the narrative is right now that like Pokemon fans will just consume whatever slop comes out, but the reality of it is that the games are actually very, very good, and it's the critics who are wrong. It's the YouTubers who are wrong. It's the people who don't play these games who are wrong. You know, like anybody who talks badly about Pokemon clearly doesn't know anything about it. And Pokopia is a really, really good example of that. You know, like here we have a wildly new, innovative take on the Pokemon franchise, and you have like a bunch of people coming out and crying foul, and it's just so laughably off base. It's so laughably like dead in the cradle. It's not going to go anywhere. Like the more we see from Pokopia, the more like excited people get for it. You know, like it, and it's very interesting to kind of see like that kind of mentality kind of growing and escalating in the community to the point where like every time you see a major Nintendo YouTuber speak out against this game, there is quite a lot of backlash to it. And I think not even from hardcore Pokemon fans. Because obviously, like, simply looking at this game, if you're a fan of life sims, if you're a fan of, like, this kind of thing in general, or a fan of Dragon Quest Builders even, like, you're going to be excited for this. This looked fantastic. This looks about as on par with, like, every other game in the genre, and, like, something like Palworld, which is kind of faux AAA, just nonsense, like Mario in an open field and Unreal Engine 5 kind of vibe to it. Like, Pokemon looks and plays better than that. And it's really not even a contest if you've played both. But the simple reality is, the people who are worshiping Palworld and hating on Pokemon, they don't play either. They don't know anything about it. Like, the only thing they know is that they have to, like, downplay Pokemon by any means possible. And that means actively going against what Nintendo is doing, like, no matter how little sense it makes. You saw so many of them come after, like, Pokemon Legends EA. You saw so many of them go after, like, Legends Arceus, like Scarlet and Violet, like the DLC for Pokemon Legends EA was attacked at one point because apparently you can't offer up a DLC expansion on day one, like that'll be re-released at a later date. Like, it's embarrassing, honestly, seeing just how many people are so adamant that the Pokemon brand is, like, constantly failing and becoming irrelevant, when in actuality it feels like it's getting bigger and more successful all the time. Like, this Power World situation really should, like, it really should indicate just how desperate and out of touch the online grifting community actually is. There was no indication at all, none, that this was actually going to be some, like, huge thing that would eclipse Pokemon in relevancy. And yet, like, the narrative, coming from Jeff Keighley, coming from, like, the YouTubers, coming from, like, the Pal Bros in general, like, the narrative was always that this was going to destroy Pokemon, and that this was, like, the next big thing. That, like, everyone was playing Power World, everyone was excited about it, everyone loved these games, and, like, here they are, like, releasing, like YouTube, like, gonkish animation videos and getting, like, 500,000 views. Like, it wasn't organic, it wasn't real. Like, it was just some, like, weird viral marketing campaign, probably paid for by Sony. Like, this was just one of the most embarrassing things we've seen happen in gaming in recent years. And it really would be called out and talked about. And hopefully, when Nintendo wins the lawsuit, we are going to see, like, a full apology from these people. And As Nintendo continues having more and more successes with the Pokemon IP, it's going to be harder and harder for grifters to just kind of write them off and ignore them. RGT85 in particular has already kind of embarrassed himself with, like, all this talk about how, like, well, the other things the Pokemon brand do does none of the other things Pokemon does matter. Like, it should only be about the video games. Like, that's just something that gets you laughed at. Honestly, like, you're not a fan if you think that, honestly. And that's kind of how I look at, like, all of this. Everything that's going on right now, like the situation, like the kind of coping and seething we're seeing from the individuals. Like, this isn't going to survive the next couple of releases, I think. Like, I think, like, putting Power World on such a pedestal and, like, worshiping it, it's just going to make you look worse when they inevitably lose and Pokemon wins. When Gen 10 comes out, I feel as if the entire hate cycle towards Pokemon is going to die a death. You can't just sit there and complain about the graphics forever and expect people to take you seriously when the game looks fantastic. Like, Legends EA looked fantastic. Scarlet and Violet looked fantastic. Like, you need to stop complaining about the visuals to these games, because too many people, like myself, understand that they are gorgeous and far surpass games on other platforms. They do look better than The Last of Us Part 2. They do look better than Crysis on a high-end gaming PC. They do look better than Baldur's Gate 3. And you know what? Pokemon is a way bigger brand than any of that.